All right, good afternoon. This is our inaugural maiden voyage on the live stream world. So pretty excited to do this, and basically, um, we're just wanted to get in and try a different format for helping answer some marketing questions for law firms. And my name is Patrick Carver. I am the CEO of Constellation Marketing, and what we've done today is collected some basically crowdsourced questions that we are going to get into and answer, and basically going to kind of have like an unfiltered uh, session going in and giving you feedback on some of these questions that you might be having in your practice, or may come up in your practice at some point. So without further ado, I will get right into it, and appreciate you taking a moment to watch this. We'll have everything in the notes and chop these up into individual reels so that you can find what you're most interested in. And just, a quick intro for us. We've been in business for about 10 years. I started the business to help my dad, who was a criminal defense attorney in Missouri. And, the problem we started with is really the common problem I see with, a lot of our clients is that, they're paying a good amount of money for marketing. They want to focus on law. They're not really feeling the impact, and the marketing people are really great at selling, really great at giving a dream, painting the picture of the dream, but never actually following through in terms of generating ROI. And so I feel like that mentality has really been our success. And over the past 10 years, we've developed into a decent sized business with over 65 clients. And this past year, we were honored as being on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list. In 2024, we had a 98.7 retention rate. So we are very proud of what we've been able to do, but we are growing as well, and would love to talk about helping out with your law firm. Awesome. So let's get into some of the specifics. I'm going to pull up the actual questions. So we're sourcing these questions, in this case, from Reddit. And so I'm going to go into and read the question that we have. And this one is, I'm soon to be a solo attorney hanging my shingle. I am currently doing audits of public companies, but I don't think that will fill my plate. What practice area should I focus on? So first off, congratulations on getting out there and doing it. It is definitely a challenge, but I think as a business owner, I can say it's definitely the most rewarding thing and most rewarding business or career path in my mind. So I will get into the answer here. So what should you do? What practice area you should get into? My first answer is, it's kind of a two-parter. Anything that pays the bills, right? And I kind of would think about this in three phases, from what I've seen with working with hundreds of solo and kind of startup type law firms that are just getting out there. And the first phase is that kind of, I'll take anything that pays the bills. And so we did this as well as a marketing agency, where we were taking on weird odd jobs at times, not just lawyers to pay the bills. We once did social media for a rock and roll sushi concept in Alabama, which was insane, but nonetheless, we did it. What we realized, it is a much better business model to specialize. And so while you're in this phase one, I would encourage you to try a couple of different things, right? I wouldn't go nuts going after 10 different practice areas, but go into it with a couple of ideas, right? Maybe it's immigration and estate planning or something like that, so you can kind of get a feel for it. And the purpose of this is really just discovery research, so that you can figure out some of these unknowns about the type of business that you want to build, rather than kind of arbitrarily deciding from the beginning, I'm going to do estate planning, and then you get into it and you realize, like, I either hate it or it's not that great of a business, or it's hard to get customers, etc. So during that first phase, try a lot of things, see what you like, And then as you move into the second phase, that's really when you want to identify what is going to scale best for you. And so I would think about this in terms of what is repeatable from an operational standpoint. So kind of what do you like? What is, what's interesting? What can you do? Relatively simply, or, within your skill set. And then the other part is this a good market? Is there a good market opportunity for this? Is it paying the bills, and those type of questions? So when you get to that point, then I think it makes a ton of sense to try and specialize into one or maybe two practice areas, kind of depending on the type of firm you want to build, right? And maybe you want to help, maybe you're in a smaller town and want to do a larger variety of stuff. That can work totally well. But in more competitive markets, I would definitely recommend going after ideally one practice area. And even in some markets, going after a niche of a niche, right? So in criminal, you're the DUI guy, or I think, in this case, it sounds like you're doing public audits. So, a type of business law, right? Or a specific type of contract, or, something like that, to kind of give you that specialization, so that, when you're getting compared to another attorney who does something similar, you have that inherent advantage of being the expert in that area. So it's kind of I think a process of finding that sweet spot where, you get it's enough business, but also specialized enough. And then on the third phase of that, you are wanting to, turn that into finding a repeatable client acquisition channels, and really then going from a referral based, or, kind of knocking on doors mentality of anything comes in, and, I'll do it for any price and that sort of thing. You start to look more at what are my repeatable client acquisition strategies. So referrals are probably going to be a big, piece of that for the lifespan of your firm. But you also want to start looking at SEO, look at ads, different avenues like that networking, different things like that, kind of depending on the practice area you choose. So I don't know if this was the focus of your question, but I'll answer the other part here in the second part, which is, what is the best practice area to start a law firm? And caveats aside, with what you like, what pays the bills. From my perspective, the three that I would focus on would be estate planning, family law, or criminal law. I like those right now because I think there is good volume for all of them. The competition is relatively lower than personal injury. On the other end, something like bankruptcy, I think those may be going up, or that will be a consistent business. But from what I've seen, it's definitely a volume game, and you're often chasing people for cash. There's not as much disposable income or available liquidity to pay your bills. And, I think at the end of the day, everybody wants a good business that, where there is a decent balance with, personal life and business. And so you want to find those that pay well, pay for your time, but are not, overly taxing, and you're not getting paid enough. So those are the ones that I would focus on. Best of luck, and hope everything goes well. All right. So the next question we're going to get to is about how to utilize marketing budget. And so this question is, I am an associate attorney at a small real estate law firm in New York, and I'm trying to build my book of business. My focus is commercial leasing. I would say that on average, my legal fees are $5,000. I have $12,000 that I'm ready to invest in marketing, grow my business. Two questions. One, at this point, my goal is not just to build brand recognition, but to actually bring in paying clients and make a good profit doing so. And if I'm charging $5K per matter on average, then it doesn't make sense for me to spend that $12K unless I'm getting at least 10 matters out of it. So first question, is this doable? Or is my average matter fee too low for this work? Or am I better off maybe waiting until I have a larger marketing budget available and try to scale this? Then the second part is, if the 12K is worth spending it, what's the best way to split it up? All SEO, Google, some print, anything else? Okay, so let's break this down into two parts. The first is a bit of a mindset shift. And to answer your question about should you, is 12K the right number, going to be good for you? I would say eliminate the 12K budget. And what I mean by that is I still want you to spend money. However, I want you to think about it in a different mindset. And the what I preach to clients and the way we operate in our business is we want to show you ROI around the things that we're doing that you're paying us for, right? And so your mentality is more of an ROI testing framework. And what I mean by that is don't go into this whole thing saying I got 12K, burning in my pocket, so I'm going to pick two or three or 10 things and kind of arbitrarily throw money at it, bleed out the bank account, and then try to pick up the pieces after and really cross my fingers that, this all works really well. So thinking about it more in a let's test kind of one strategy at a time, or do limited spending on a strategy to kind of test it to see if we get any signals that this is actually going to work, or better yet, if it's actually going to produce a return on investment for you. And then you can apply more money to it as you go, rather than just dumping all of your chips in at once. And so your math is doable, but I would walk before you run. And so instead of going all in with this 12K that you're thinking about spending and hoping to get 10 cases, make a more, I think, realistic goal, right? Spend a quarter of that, or spend 50% where you're spending $6,000 and the goal is five matters. Because just speaking from experience, when you're starting to go from zero to that first client, getting 10 can feel really daunting and challenging. And so I think mentally it's easier and better to kind of build those smaller checkpoints or milestones. And so even going after like three clients on a 30% of that budget, I think is a better kind of mindset. And then you will get a very important piece of data. If any of that works out, you'll get your cost per customer acquisition. And so you'll know better, okay, I have to spend, for every $1,000 I spend on ads, I'm getting one client that's worth 5,000. Okay, those are my unit economics. And then I spent 5,000 on print and I didn't get any leads, or I got leads, but they were all bad quality, no customers. So then you start to understand what your cost per acquisition is, and you can start to then think about how to scale that, right? And so you can repurpose that money you spent on print over to the working ads campaign and start to stack those $1,000 cost per acquisition, or whatever that number is. And you can always increase your fee down the road, right? So don't get too bogged down at the beginning of your journey here with what your fee is. You need some reps, and you need to, I think most importantly, get some of those positive reviews that you can put on Google, you can put on your website, so that when you are in pitches, you have this background of, hey, I've done this before, I've gotten great results, and I'm not just saying that. This is coming from other people, right? So that is the best thing you can do to kind of build your reputation, not only just from people seeing the website, but on Google Business, on your Google Business profile. Reviews are the best thing you can do to grow that, and so you show up more often when people are out there searching on their phones. And let's get into like a more technical breakdown, though, of if you were super committed to spending that 12K, how would you actually spend it, right? So because of the the stage that you are within your business, my answer is going to be different than if you already had a business and had been doing it for 5 years, and you've got some new business pipelines established. So this is during the startup phase, is my recommendation. And the first thing I would do is ads, and specifically I'm going to do Google pay-per-click, potentially Meta, since you're on the real estate side, maybe LinkedIn potentially. LinkedIn is pretty expensive, and I tend to think that Meta and LinkedIn are both going to be less demand oriented, or the signals that you're going to be getting are going to be lower intent compared to somebody who is literally typing into their Google search that I'm looking for a landlord lawyer, right? Those are the people you want. They're going to be the most ready to buy and high intent, looking for your services and give you the best possible ability to potentially close those people. Meta and LinkedIn are more like, people out there who could fit your description, but they're not actively doing it at that moment. So you might hit on some good people, but from a pure mindset of, you need to make every dollar count right now, I would recommend PPC because I think you're going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to deal with uh, less tire kickers, and you're going to have a higher chance at actually getting paying clients. So I would spend like 9,000 of a $12,000 budget on that. The next thing I would do is actually a little bit different. It would be cold email, and the reason I like this, and if you're not familiar with it, I'm just talking about, emailing people out of the blue, right? And and introducing them to what you do, trying to get a meeting, trying to get something going. I would recommend this because you are going after a pretty definable market, right? And in contrast with something like criminal defense, uh, there's no job title for person who got a DUI, right? Or a person who just got charged with domestic violence. But with your particular type of client, you will be able to find those people. And so, I'm not as familiar with the, looking for those type of contacts in the real estate, but I would recommend using a tool like Apollo. And that's like, I don't know what their rate is, but it's probably like $100 a month or something like that. And then I would, to start, just use Gmail. And basically, you're going to go in Apollo. You can use all these filters and find people who match your criteria. So find people who have the job titles, or are associated with the types of businesses that you're after that you think would be good targets. And you can get this pool of people who more likely than not are kind of your ICP, your ideal customer profile. And then from there, you can just do it very quick and cheap by taking those people, creating a templated email that you can just copy and paste over and over again. That's the easy way. If you want to kind of like scale this up, you could even take all of that and use a tool like Instantly, where you're going to be able to do those campaigns in bulk. But I would recommend just starting with, writing like 50 emails, right? Do like 10 a day, work on your pitch, kind of test different ideas, different things about how you can like show your value and get somebody to the point where they're like, okay, yeah, I'll take a meeting with this person. And there's a lot of information on the internet, where you can just use AI to like give you some tips and go in that. But that, to me, you could get that running for like under $500, probably like 200, and that is just another piece that you could use to kind of offset some of the ads and get some potentially early wins and get some activity. Third, I would do SEO, building your digital presence. So you mentioned it early, kind of building your brand. Always going to be the best idea, because ultimately that's going to produce your lowest cost per acquisition for new clients, because if they know you, they're going to seek you out, or you don't really have to pay for that. You're going to be just investing in it, and then you have this asset. So I mean, you are paying for it, but it's an asset that can appreciate with time if you work on it. And so that would extend, getting a website, signing up for Google Business Profile, signing up for Facebook page, Instagram page, YouTube, just really anywhere you can sign up that carries business information. I would do that, and that's going to help Google get to know you, do better in SEO. But it is a longer term play, so I wouldn't sacrifice a lot of your budget on it at this point. I would just get that process going, spend about 2,000, 2,500 out of the 12K budget. And then your last question, I think, was print. I just don't know. I mean, my natural instinct is to say no, because it's much harder to track. I mean, you can do that with like tracking numbers and a website and stuff like that. But for me, it's like a lot of things have to go right. Like you have to be, get the people who need your service, and they need to be reading the thing that you're, showing for. Then they have to call you. Then yada yada. So Can be done. However, I think it's more challenging, and you're going to get lower intent people, or there's more friction between you and getting those deals, getting those clients than uh, if you were doing one of these other paths. So let's move on to, oops, that's where we had on the last one. So apologies for messing up my slide flow. All right, this one's kind of an interesting one. It's how to market on an ethnic newspaper as a PI lawyer. So let's get into it. I am an associate at a personal injury firm and exploring advertising in an ethnic newspaper to build my own book of business with the firm, looking for guidance from lawyers who've done something similar for both marketing strategy and intake mechanics. As it stands now, the lawyers that advertise in this specific newspaper are not licensed in my state, but refer to lawyers in my state are not of my ethnic group, which can create communication issues. On the strategy side, I am interested in how others have approached messaging, call to action, and credibility when advertising to a specific ethnic community, particularly when you were not yet a solo. On the intake side, I need a clean professional setup where calls from the ad do not go to the firm's main line, but can ultimately reach my iPhone. I cannot reliably answer live calls during the workday, so I would need a solid voicemail system with transcription and call logs. I do not want to use Google Voice, but I'm willing to pay for a separate number of service. I would appreciate any insight into what has actually worked, including VoIP, call forwarding, virtual receptionists, other systems, and any pitfalls to avoid when running ads while still employed at a firm. All right, cool. So I'm not a lawyer, so I won't, try to give you advice that I don't think I'm capable of giving or have the experience for. But I do think I can add a little bit of value on the marketing strategy side, right? And the first thing I would recommend in this pursuit is test things, right? Don't go in thinking it's going to be a big hit or it's not going to work at all, right? And my philosophy on this and what I preach to lawyers, especially those who are in kind of startup mode or trying to figure things out, is to test often and make sure it's tracked. So the best thing you can do if you are interested in this and you think there's legs to it is to create a test, set up those test details at the beginning, and those details for me would be what's the theory, right? And you're just writing it down on a piece of paper, just somewhere to kind of track this, like a spreadsheet. Don't have to do anything super. And in fact, I would say just do whatever's the simplest way to track this for you. But put this information in there because it's very easy to get started. And then after the fact, you are looking, you want to get this information and wish you'd kind of gone through this. And then you're not set up from the beginning. So the fact that you're looking into like tracking and all this stuff is great. And keep going in that direction. The other thing you want to look like is like what would success look like, right? And so you can then start to figure out a rough budget for this, right? What is the cost of the print? Okay, how many calls does it take for me to get a sale or get a new client? And what do I think this might produce? What would be, how much is my client value? So then you start to think about, okay, this is the advertising cost, additional cost for the receptionist or other tools that you might need, the call number, all that stuff should be mostly cheap, but definitely factor it in so you have your all-in cost per acquisition, and then figure out how many you need to close, right? If you are a high ticket type of you're PI, so yeah, I mean you're potentially could get a huge case, but I think those are often more rare, right? And so you're probably looking at like a $10,000 average case value, maybe a little bit more, or depending on what you actually do in the market. But let's just say it's about $10,000. So you need to figure out or think about, okay, I need potentially to get 10 calls from this to convert one case, or I'm really good at sales, I'm going to convert 30% or 50%. So is it realistic that, I might get 10 calls from this? And you may not know that until you actually put money down on it, but at least you now have a baseline understanding of what needs to happen in order for this to be considered a success. So if you do that, then the second part, I would say that you know, some of the messaging is I'm not gonna say it's irrelevant, but if you don't get this part right, then everything else is not worth it, right? So I will defer to other attorneys, who have actually done this before to give you their opinion on the messaging and stuff like that. But as far as part two for tracking and operationally, what you need to think about, what I would do is I would set up a Ring Central account, and I like that because they offer transcription. They have all the tracking information already plugged in. It's pretty popular among law firms, and it can do call forwarding. It can do all of that stuff, and I think it's pretty reasonably priced as well. The next thing I would do is create a one-page website and add that tracking number to the one-page website. Put that tracking number in the ad, and the one-page website, you should buy a domain and whatever you just want something that's recognizable, right? And so if you have like a little hook or some ssort of specific thing you like pushing, make that the domain name. So my 30% lawyer, 20% lawyer, best auto accidents now.com or whatever. And you're doing this for two reasons. Number one, it makes it very easy to find rather than go to the firm's website. And I think you wanted to keep it separate anyway. So don't go to the firm's website / attorneys / Marvin Jefferson, whatever. It's like too much. Make it really simple. Put a QR code on it as well to make it even simpler, right? All of that stuff is very easily doable now with like ChatGPT, or you can just search, make me a QR code and link to that. Use Wix. You could do it on Manus. You could do it on Claude, where you just literally are asking it to make a one-page website with that call number. And then you have your home base, essentially where to direct all of this traffic. You can put your email on there too. Next, you want to make a standardized list of intake questions. So this is essentially like your discovery call. And I'm sure you already have this, very familiar with this in your existing PI practice. So you could just take that. And then I would hire a pay per minute intake service or find somebody on Upwork. I would probably just go with the pay per minute intake service for that, because they are already going to have the staffing set up for it. They're going to have people like layers of people who are available to take the calls if like one person's on a call or something like that. And with if you were to go to Upwork and put up a job and hire somebody to be your temporary receptionist sort of person, they are you would maybe have to pay them by the hour. It gets complicated if they're like not at their desk or they're taking a call or whatever. So there's a bunch of companies out there. I don't have any that I recommend specifically, but you can find those pretty easy. But I would just go pay per minute, and that way you can buy 500 minutes or something and just kind of run out the clock. And then I would also get a Calendly, and the purpose of this is a meeting scheduling tool. And then you could either theoretically put that on your website itself, but if you want to kind of make this clean and do it, kind of pipe people in to qualify them before they actually get to you to kind of preserve your time, then have the intake person do that. And then at the, make it clear that the call to action or the end product of that is you want to go ahead and get them to schedule something on your calendar. And so they'll be able to book those appointments through the calendar with the prospect, and they can get their email, they can get the phone number, and put all of that information in for them. And that way, you immediately get the notification that that it's going to be that the call is happening. You'll have all of that data and everything, and then they should be able to have either you can get a very basic CRM, like you can get HubSpot for free, or just like a basic intro plan, just to kind of keep any where they can pipe in the contacts that they get, the leads that they get, and put them into that, or I would just go with the spreadsheet, to be honest, at this rate, until you actually figure out what, if this is something that's going to scale. Lastly, you handle the proposal call. So you've got your appointment set up. They basically qualified them. And then you want to be the person to come in and actually do the sales. And so that's the end product on that calendar. And take it away. Hopefully you've got some sales skills and you can knock those out. So hopefully that's helpful, and best of luck to you. All right, moving on. Curious how others are thinking about this. Lately, it feels like a lot of legal marketing conversations are shifting away from pure keywords and rankings towards how well a firm actually answers real client questions, especially with how people now search: voice, AI commands, long form questions, etc. Not talking about tools or tactics, but conceptually clear explanations versus optimized pages, structuring answers the way clients ask questions, location plus context versus generic legal content. Do you guys feel that it has shifted already, or is traditional SEO still doing most of the heavy lifting for you? Cool. So this is a fun one to talk about. We specialize in SEO, so I love kind of talking about this and how it's how the landscape is changing. And so I think you're spot on, but there's a little bit of a twist, which I will get to. So number one, I do think that good SEO and this are superfluous, right? There is, to me, it's the same thing. And I would say good SEO is actually adopting this shift already, this kind of qualitative shift, and that good SEOs are already, they're not in the mindset of set it and forget it, where they create a page once and they've SEO'd it and it sits. They are always kind of thinking about, there's always this element of iteration and improving the content on those pages and changing so that, if you are ranking, you're continuing to rank or go from page 2 to page 1, hopefully creating a competitive moat around your page, and basically making a difference over a competitive difference against the competition. And to your question, I do think Google, in their algorithm over the past couple of updates, the core updates they've done over the past 6 months, have all been around strengthening the EEAT signals and prioritizing websites that have actual demonstrated expertise, experience, authority. So what they're trying to do is buffer, push back against the rise of AI content, which, with AI tools and AI writing tools and SEO optimization tools, you're getting a lot of very similar content, because it is largely based on looking at what's ranking and then creating an amalgamation of it, or looking at it from a mathematical perspective and saying, okay, these have 1,700 words. Okay, mine needs to have 1,700 words. I need to mention these, topics or keywords into it. And I think Google's has gotten increasingly better at, understanding true quality, or finding elements on pages to delineate between, okay, somebody's just kind of repeating or regurgitating text, and looking for those quality signals, this person is showing a specific example they had from a case, or they're talking about, they have reviews, or they're going into their credentials for how long they've serviced this type of business, these type of cases, and so on. And so there's really no barrier of entry anymore to creating a lot of that content. I mean, there's still definitely skill with it, and but I think it's much easier now when you don't even need a writer, and you can just have AI, push that out. So the interesting twist, or not twist yet, but the interesting thing to think about too, is that this also, for me, means that Google is stealing your informational keyword traffics, because they are now uh, really only showing results for things that they cannot exactly create themselves. And so, we've seen this with our clients and across the legal ecosystem in general. Like they're vacuuming up 50% of uh, traffic, that lawyers used to get, and that's a byproduct of them scraping and in educating themselves on what lawyers have written, and then repurposing it into an AI overview. And so, basic questions, informational type or educational type questions that used to be sending traffic and would generate leads for clients are now just being absorbed by Google. And so it's definitely a tricky time for law firms, because in some cases they're seeing drops of 20% of leads, or more, because people were finding them from there. So, kind of the twist in terms of your question, what I alluded to is that I do think the content is changing. I don't think it's as simple as clear explanation versus optimized page, or structuring answers versus et cetera. I think it's more about knowledge gain, and who best can show these EAT principles of proving that you are an expert, you have the authority to talk about this, and so you have an inherent value, as opposed to somebody who's just learning about it for the first time, putting it into an AI writer, and coming up with text. And so I think it is partly about the quality of the answers, but I also think a lot of it is more just about the tapestry of showing that you are in fact a authority on this, and that is a differentiator from other people out there or other content. I think they're also looking for knowledge gain in this content, because if every single page says the exact same thing and talks about the same entity and the same keywords at the same frequency, then they don't have any way to really elevate content, and ultimately their job is to give users good answers quickly. So they are wanting to identify who those people are and surface those answers more often. So I think law firms are needing to come up with more unique components that cannot easily be created through AI. And so that's like a unique point of view, your expertise, experience, anything that AI can't reflect, or can't easily recreate, is going to be likely a good thing to add to that. And the more you can answer the question, I think clearly and in consumable formats, I think usability is a big component here. So that pages that used to be very, very long because they needed to be optimized, and say all of the right keywords, I think that's going to kind of go away a little bit. And it's more about usability of the page. Is this giving the reader the best experience, or are they having to comb through 20 pages of material to get the answer they want? And so how long they stay on the page, incorporating video, doing these different things to ultimately satisfy the user, I think is really going to be much more of a differentiation point, something that is going to equate to SEO success or visibility success as these AI tools start to get market share. So do your best to differentiate yourself, cover everything, but keep thinking about the user in the back of your head. And is this easily readable? Is it providing value? All of that stuff, rather than just going for the SEO optimization point. Awesome. All right, so we're getting down to the last question for this inaugural Friday Freestyle live stream, and really appreciate you taking the moment to check it out and listen to some of the comments and answers to these questions that we've been getting into. It's I've had a good time doing it and like this format, so we will see where it goes. This is, like I said, the last question, and it starts with, "Hi there. I work for a PI firm specializing in MVAs and slip and falls. Does anyone know a reputable LSA company? We are getting the quality and quantity. We aren't getting the quality and quantity of leads we want. Feel free to respond. DM, yada, yada. Thank you very much." Okay. So in this thread, there is some back and forth around like, people saying, well, you can't optimize LSA. And so like, you know, don't, dumb question, basically. And, I think, there's some truth to that, but I'll try to be as helpful as possible with what I think is the like essence of the question, which, is kind of like, um, you know, we want some help overall, incorporating these into the CRM, doing some different things, not just the exact LSA optimization component. And so I'll try to kind of answer it from that perspective rather than just the short answer, which is like, there's not a lot you can do to optimize LSAs. So number one, I would recommend finding a legal specific marketing company if you're looking for a reputable LSA company, right? Somebody else can do it too. I mean, honestly, like this is a simple ad platform, ad engine. Google specifically designed it, for this. That being said, there are like at times things you can do to kind of improve your chances and improve the the benefit that you're getting out of this. And these are going to be like subtle things, but people who are in this world every single day, specifically legal, are going to learn about those little like tips and tricks that get you a little bit of leverage over other people in this space. And so I would recommend going with a legal marketing company who has a good track record with PPC, because if they're already doing well in the PPC side, they are going to be on top of it when it comes to LSA. Because the biggest things that you're looking for, want to be aware of, are like policy changes. Hey, instead of we're no longer going to do I forget what is the term, not rebuttals, but basically you can flag call unqualified calls and try to get refunds for them. Don't really do that anymore. It's all automatic. So there are changes and some subtle things that like happen, and you would rather have somebody who's like in that world, tracking those things and can at least give you guidance on like, yeah, this is a big thing. You need to do X, Y, Z to kind of position yourself better for this. When a new change comes out, like maybe they'll start offering messaging, or texting as opposed to just calls or whatever. It's good to be in the realm of this and doing it. Now, to the rest of this conversation happening, the responses are generally accurate in the rest of this thread, which is that there really is not much you can do to quote optimize your LSA ads the same way that you would think about optimizing a pay-per-click campaign, where you have a lot of different variables. You've got landing pages, you've got bid strategy, negative keywords, like all of this other stuff that you can actually do. And it is a more like merit based kind of system, and this is more arbitrary in terms of who gets the leads and how many you're getting and what the quality is and whatnot. So outside of some basic stuff that you can do that I think has already been mentioned in here, which is like making sure that you are only selecting the practice areas that you want to receive leads for. So if you are doing MVAs and slip and falls, then those are the ones you'd want to specifically select, right, inside the personal injury category. And but I would play around with this because what you might find is maybe that's the conventional wisdom that people are going after, and that's become the hot advice. And you might actually get better leads by just doing personal injury, because most people, that's all they really know about personal injury is car accidents or slip and falls. So it's worth testing and kind of playing around with that. But I mean, I think the general advice is good and consistent, which is to start by just going after the really specific cases that you want, so that you can reduce the budget spend, and not spend a lot of money. But I will tell you, in other areas like criminal law, it's not a good, the quality is not good generally for LSAs, because a lot of other stuff gets mixed in, and you really don't get those like good cases very often. It's a lot of people who don't really understand what a criminal lawyer actually does, and so they're calling in, trying to get, hey, I need to sue my neighbor upstairs who's really loud and stuff like that. It's not actually, criminal law. So have to play around with it a little bit. And, but again, you can do all that yourself. But if you're also just looking for like that extra layer of, information and just like oversight, then yeah, go with a company who will look at that. Maybe do your PPC as well. So, you can't get a lot of strategy related to this, right? But there are some ways to get value from a marketing company. Number one, accurate tracking. So they will help you, or should help you, depending on the quality of the marketing agency. They can help you get tracking numbers set up very easily, so that you can tie all activity related to LSAs back to this, rather than just rely on the LSA dashboard itself. Because what can happen is people may find you on there, put your number down, call you back later, and it's not going to get logged in there. And then you equate that with another marketing effort. They can help you with CRM integration. That's maybe more of an IT thing, but marketing agencies will do it. Will help you do it. They can help you with category selection. You don't really need an expert there. But if they have other clients in your space, they may have some of those kind of unique insights that, hey, actually, we don't understand why, but by clicking, just personal injury and excluding all the others, we're actually getting better lead results or whatever. It's like a weird kind of quirk within Google's system. The other thing they can help you with is Google Business Profile optimization and updates to your Google Business Profile. It is theorized by a lot of people in our space that that is kind of the one lever that you can actually, manage or have some positive benefit by working on it. And really, the most important thing in that realm is getting reviews. So, just from a conversion perspective, if your agency can help you strategize, and also maybe provide the software, the tools that allow you to get more reviews and get those reviews more consistently, it's my belief that those type of updates and those type of signals are going to be positive in an avenue like this, or with a tool like this. I can't prove that, but that's my, that is my theory. Because if you look at the way Google prioritizes businesses when it comes to like organic visibility with their Google Business Profile, one of the key thing they're looking at is activity. They want to know that you are an engaged, active business, that you're getting reviews consistently, you're updating your information, you're adding pictures, you're a legitimate business, and you're responsive. That if you get a question, you're answering it quickly, you're responding to reviews. So a marketing agency can help you with all of that, and kind of like give you some of that extra oomph to, and maybe strategies for collecting reviews and things like that. So keep that in mind. Google Business Profiles and LSAs are inextricably linked. And so, it definitely won't hurt. May not give you a huge leg up, but certainly if you're, spending money on this in the PI space, you're spending a lot of money. So might as well get the, best bang for your buck on this. And my final piece on this is, you specifically, or what I've seen in the thread is that, sometimes the LSAs work great, sometimes they don't. My specific theory on this whole thing, and we've had discussions with folks who are Google Diamond product experts, and if you're curious what that is, go and look it up. But there's basically a handful of people who are independent or private, companies who have ascended to being this special tier of access and connection to the actual Google product team who handles Google business profiles. And so they kind of have this like secret pipeline of information. You can utilize them to, do like appeals on your behalf or different things like that. And we have heard through those people that, because we've been in a similar situation where, LSAs are just like firing on all cylinders. And it's like, this is amazing, especially in PI where the cost per lead is, typically lower than a pay-per-click. And so you're like getting cases and it's like, oh, this is amazing. This is awesome. And then one day it just stops and you basically stop getting LSAs and, and it sucks. The explanation we have gotten about this is that Google more or less rotates winners. And I don't, I'm not even going to speculate on like how they do this or, is it automated? Is it some guy with a lever or somebody in your past with a vendetta and they're kicking you out? I have no idea. But what my theory on this is that they are going to kind of rotate people around or, whether that's automatically or whatever, to give people access to the leads. And I don't think it's uniform. I don't, and I've seen people try to kind of game this, with strategy by making their weekly budget like an enormous amount of money with thinking that, okay, because I'm having such a big budget, they're going to try and satisfy my budget and run it out. Or, I would get a higher volume of leads. And we don't see any correlation with that with people who are putting like a $10,000 weekly budget versus $1,000 weekly budget. There's not really a correlation about total number of reviews. So there's really, there's not, there's no secret lever that someone's using to get a better volume of it. And, I think personally that this is a byproduct of Google, people coming in, they want to kind of please everybody, right? And so it's the same model in my head as what, your Avo or your FindLaw or any of these other directories do, where, there's only a limited amount of leads that they have to dish out. And so, everybody can't get a uniform or, can't get the most leads. And so I think these companies give you a little sprinkling of leads, especially when you come in as validation, right? That I put money in the machine and I'm getting it back, and that's great. And then they're kind of keeping you and teasing you to keep you interested and keep the money in there, but they just don't have enough volume of quality leads to give everybody 50 leads every single month all the time. And so basically somebody gets becomes a winner and somebody else becomes a loser with it. And so only other things I would say that you can do to kind of really potentially move the needle in a positive way on this is like get more profiles, get more find a low cost location that you could spend $500 for, get some reviews to it, and that way you can do it across town and get an LSA account for that as well, and kind of increase the number of opportunities that you get. So hope all of that was helpful, and if there are any follow-ups, would love to continue to answer that. Okay, so thank you all so much for your time today. If you want to talk marketing, of course, I'm always interested in helping you grow your law firm. Like I mentioned, we're working with over 85 law firms throughout the US, but we've got a good number of spots open in different markets. We do offer exclusivity, so we will work with you and dominate your competition. If you want to get on a call, give me a shout. This is my email right here, and would love to hear from you. So thank you all so much, and hope you have a lovely day.